Hey there, and welcome to the Sarah Renee Show. I'm your host, Sarah Renee, and today I'm going to share with you three powerful mindset shifts for generational chain breakers. And so, first, before we dive in, what is a generational chain breaker? So, we have to look at what are generational chains in this context. And in this context, generational chains are those generational curses, wounds, sins, um, toxic patterns that are just passed down. Trauma could be in there, that are passed down generation after generation that, you know, usually, like, best case is that every generation has maybe made a dent in healing, in breaking those chains. So if you think of like chains, like a chain link uh, fence, it's like you got to break one chain at a time, and then sometimes it's just the family, no one has the tools to know how to break them. No one is able to get to the point where they can break them, or they're willing to break them, or they even know what chains to break. Sometimes there's not an awareness around the chains, and so every generation ends up adding another chain. You see this in like patterns where like a pattern of addiction, I'll use it as an example, is a really common one. If the addiction is just passed on to every generation, nobody recovers, nobody gets help, no one even acknowledges that it's addiction, maybe. Nobody even acknowledges that this is a real thing. That's like, it's really common in families that sweep things under the rug. Right. And like people are raised to not talk about it, to not look at it, and so they're like literally raised to not have an awareness of it. Right. And that's the chain, like trying to carry on. That's the chain. It's the attachment to the chain through ego, through patterns, and what we're going to talk about in a minute, through spiritual agreements with that chain, through the contracts formed in the spirit world. And I would say a lot of times through the influence of, the enemy, of those darker forces, trying to reinforce that chain and trying to silence anyone who questions it. And so a lot of times the generational chain breaker will, one, they have this like very clear awareness of, I don't want to continue this. I don't want my kids to grow up this way. I don't want my marriage to look like this. I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to live my life that way. So there's this knowing, there's a clear awareness, no matter how hard the people around you try to sweep it back under the rug, which usually results in that person feeling like the black sheep, feeling like they don't belong in the family, or even, in some cases, like almost essentially exiled from the family, kind of kicked out, kind of like really labeled the black sheep of like, not invited, or like, very clearly not included to the same degree as those who just kind of keep going through the motions, don't challenge anything, um, don't also like who aren't trying to prove the people who are in that pattern wrong by breaking it in their own life. And I think that's really important to understand as we dive into this conversation of generational healing, is that when someone is very triggered by your healing, it's not, it can feel so hurtful, but it's not that that person doesn't want you to heal. It's not that they truly want you to suffer. It's more of that they are in a place, if they are still stuck in that pattern, that they have so many excuses around them, coming at them from, again, from ego, from the enemy, from, spiritual agreements. They're like subconsciously in this agreement, and they're like thinking like, I can't break it. And so they have all of these excuses on a more conscious level, all of these reasons of, I've tried my best, of that's not for me, of this is who I am. And if you're trying to change me, then that's not love, or something of that nature, of like, I want to live life on my own terms. I don't want to get better, or of even more shameful type excuses of, I'm beyond hope. All of that works for other people. It won't work for me. I'm different. Our family's different. This is different. Those kind of defeatist stories. And so when somebody goes and they heal, even if you're not trying to like, like let's say it's a parent and you're like, you go, let's keep this addiction example, and it's a parent who maybe has an active addiction, and you are 19 or something, and you realize that, hey, you are using or drinking and you're an addict, and you have some kind of awakening, and you go get help, and you start going to 12-step meetings, and you start recovering. And that parent who isn't in recovery, even though like you're probably doing your codependent work, like your Al-Anon stuff, like your children of alcoholic stuff, so you might not be directly telling them, hey, I think you have a problem. I think you need to come do this. But they might still feel like it's not them on a soul level. It's not their true self. They're chains, these chains of addiction, this spiritual agreement that was formed, or spiritual contract, you could think of it as, that was written with this, to agree to exist in this lifestyle of addiction and pain and suffering and secrecy and, trauma and all that kind of comes with it. Fear is usually the biggest one, especially with addiction. Um, that like they're going to be subconsciously threatened by that recovery until they're willing. Because at the point where they become willing, they become curious about getting better themselves and what that might look like, then suddenly your recovery becomes inspiring for them. And so even if they can't hear you, even if somebody pushes you away, you still keep the prayers in your heart for them. You still honor your recovery, because, you never know when they're going to be ready to see that, like, you had all of the same excuses that I had. How did you do this? You had similar things that I have, like, similar issues, similar thought patterns, similar trauma. How are you doing this? And so suddenly it goes from being triggering and like offensive to the chains, right? To the wounds, to the toxic patterns, to being a beacon of hope, to being permission to break the chains. And what God shows me in the spirit world as an example of how that happens is that as you are breaking the chains in your own life, if you think of like if this is your, if you imagine in your head, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, it's like, imagine like the parent in this example, even you could go back through your lineage of where you know this started. And the chain links every person, every generation. And so the chain eventually comes to you. Well, then you start breaking that chain one link at a time. One link at a time. You don't have to sever the whole thing at once. You break it one link at a time, and eventually it's going to get to that person, and they're going to have the option to choose freedom because of the chains that you broke. But guess what's even more powerful than that? Is that even if they're just so knocked down by by the deception of these chains, of this pattern, that they can't see it, you still broke the chain of them passing it forward, and you broke the chain, most importantly, for it going forward to the other generations. So being a successful chain breaker, to put it in human terms, is not, it's not determined by if the other people heal. It's determined by you breaking the chains. By you saying, this pattern is not going to continue through me. And it's so much easier said than done. And anybody who's tried to break any chains knows that. Because God, here's the thing, God chose you. God chooses the chain breakers. He chooses the ones. He makes you specifically to go into this lineage, to be in this family, to break these chains. That is why you have the awareness to begin with, because God made you in a way that you would notice, I don't think I want to do this. I feel like there's a better way. I feel like there's something different. But here's the thing, you can't break the chains without inheriting the chains. So God built you to break the chains, but that doesn't mean that he puts you in the family and you don't have, and the chains just don't touch you. That would be great. We'd all love that. I would make it so much easier. But you got to inherit them to break them. So this is when, okay, maybe you inherit the addiction and you break the chains in recovery. Maybe you don't inherit the addiction, but maybe you inherit the trauma of that, or codependence, or like some type of behaviors, of like fixing, controlling, managing, chaos creator, some kind of pattern like that was established in response to the addiction. It's still adding on the links to that chain. And so you can maybe say, oh, I did it. I succeeded. I'm not like them. I'm not an addict. And there's still an invitation to look at, is this showing up at all in me? Or is there any like side effects you could think of it as? Are there any patterns that are rooted in this pattern that I have had a hard time breaking? So that's the other piece. As we talk about these mindset shifts today, I want you to think of, and I'm going to do this series because I'm getting ready to launch later this week my new course. It's going to be amazing. It's a six-week course, and it's called The Anointed Chain Breakers, a Generational Healing Journey. It's going to be so amazing. I've never focused a course on generational healing, so I'm really excited to dive deeper. We've always covered it in every class that I lead, because it's a huge part of the spiritual journey, but we've never gone this deep in a group program. So I'm really excited to offer it to you. This is something that I do with my private clients, And I'm super excited to open it up and make it accessible to more people. So definitely stay tuned for that. And so as I'm preparing for that, I've been really inspired to create some of these episodes on this same topic because I'm just kind of like fully immersed in this whole generational healing topic right now. And I love it so much. So what I want you to kind of be reflecting on as we talk about these mindset shifts is what chains do you have going on? And without judgment, right? This is just awareness. And like you could think of like what chains have I broken? What chains do I have going on? And usually when you're doing the inner work, you're on a path of spiritual growth like we are here in this community, usually the most common ways that these generational chains show up in your life in present time are through either patterns or habits, patterns of behavior, unhealthy habits, um, patterns even in like how you feel, patterns like the same argument with your spouse or with your parent, or the same feeling rejected, feeling shut down, feeling unseen, um, habits like emotional eating or sabotage or escapism, procrastination, like codependent stuff, big one, people pleasing, huge when it comes to this, self-abandonment, another huge one that I see, especially with women. Um, all sorts of things, right? I could probably do a full episode on that, but that you can't seem to break. So that's the key distinction, that like you keep improving on or you break it, but then they come back. So it's like the pattern, it's like that thing. If you're on this healing path, right? It's like the thing where you're like, oh my gosh, I have done so much work around this. I thought I have healed it. Why is it back? Why is it coming up now? Usually, like we all have a thing like that where it does creep back in. And it's like, because maybe we're not getting to the root cause or we're not connecting the um the root cause healing with tools to sustain it. That's usually what I see in my clients when they come to me and they've done like a lot of healing work and they're like, Sarah, am I just destined to live like this forever or to have this thing forever? And it's like, no, that's not how God made you. So let's look at it and let's connect the dots between the tools that you're using in present time and the healing the origin of it. And doing that work is where you get real results, because it's like you got to do it at the same time, because when we address the origin, let's say that spiritual contract, that spiritual agreement, then the trigger comes up in real time. So then we feel the way that we feel, we act out, we get upset, however we respond. And a lot of times we unknowingly come back into agreement with that story, with that belief system, with that chain. And so then we got to go back to the origin, do some work there. Then we got to use the tools in the present time to keep it, to rebuild, to establish new patterns, new reactions, new responses. And that is how you have lasting healing. Okay, so think about how it's coming up for you. Obviously, triggers. So it's like patterns that you just can't quite seem to break. And then triggers, like your big triggers, the things that like, oh, that is something that really triggers me. It's really hard for me. Maybe you've even like cleaned up a lot of your reactions to it, but you still feel it internally when it comes up for you. So that's what you want to kind of have in your mind as we go through these mindset shifts, to see how you can apply them to this area of your life to have a breakthrough there. And really quick before we go on that, I do just want to touch on so the origins of these generational um, chains. So we talked about it like trauma, addiction, but I wanted to go into like when somebody in our lineage, maybe they're being abused, or they were in the depression, or they grew up in like a war zone. They go into survival mode, of course, or something like there are stories, there are realities that they are dealing with that were so challenging or traumatic or tragic or whatnot, like, or even maybe not even extremely tragic, but went like low level stress for a long period of time where they adapted, but they also came into agreement with some beliefs. They came into agreement with some beliefs that aren't from God, that are from either the ego in the human world or the enemy, those dark forces trying to create lack, trying to create fear, like feeding off the violence and the fear and the uncertainty or the neglect or the addiction, right? Like so anything dark, those like anything satanic, demonic, dark forces, whatever word you feel comfortable using, they feed off chaos, arguing, um, negativity, um, obviously violence, fear. And that's not to say that you should never feel those things or that you're going to be like a victim of that. We would never, ever declare that because we are safe in the light of God. We are always protected. But sometimes those voices create this noise where we come into agreement with this way of living that is not what God has in mind for us. Right? And so it's not even like that we make a deal with the devil, so to speak. It's like we come into agreement with the spirit of fear. Because where if you look back at this person of where it originated from, maybe they grew up somewhere where there were bombs going off all of the time, where food was really limited. And it's like, of course there was a spirit of fear. So we don't judge anyone, but we look at where could this have originated from that you know of in your ancestry, and what were the soul agreements potentially formed during that time. And then also we want to look at, when we're thinking about the origins, what are the wounds and what's any sin? So if we're thinking about sin, you've heard me say this. I love Father Mike's definition of sin is an attempt to be happy without God. I talked about in one of the recent episodes of like addiction being an attempt at a solution without God. So it's like sin kind of can go hand in hand with the wounds because it's generally how we try to fix the wound without God or without spiritual tools, without knowing, and so it's not always, the intention isn't always there to be like pushing God away, but sometimes people just don't know. Okay, so wounds that have been, people didn't know how to treat, didn't know how to heal, that got continued on, or sin, like trying to treat the wound, but like self-medicating, lashing out, um, detaching, becoming super narcissistic, um, selfish behavior, using people, lying, cheating, all of those, maybe what started out as a way to survive and then was twisted into harmful behavior. And then that leads us to just kind of the basic, like maybe it's not like something that you would associate with as harming people, but it's like a pattern of survival mode. So it could be, some of the chains could be like living in that constant survival mode, living in like this, like overly stimulated, overly heightened, fight or flight mode, and then having health problems because of it, or things of that nature. Okay, so that's like the origin is in the spirit world. How God shows it to me is like it was like this contract signed with that pattern, that belief system, that behavior, that um, cycle. And so there's like this agreement of this is how I respond to this. This is how I treat this. And then at some point in time, that begins to morph into that person's identity and then is passed on like a character trait, is passed on like this is who we are. This is our story. And that can be really hard. That's when that deeper identity work really comes into play of like distinguishing what is my true self and what isn't. So hopefully as you're listening to this, you have some stuff coming up in your mind, of that you've been experiencing yourself or in your family. Um, and so essentially that's all goes on. And then again, we inherit these chains, but we inherit them. So we're getting into our first mindset shift, because the first mindset shift of a generational chain breaker is that I am not doomed, right? That we go from feeling doomed. I can't believe I'm growing up like this. I can't believe I have to deal with this. I can't believe I have to be the one to fix this. Have you ever had resentment of being the one that's doing all the healing work? That's a common, I see this probably at least weekly with new clients that come to me. And this is how we flip it. God chose you. You are not doomed. You are not a victim of your family, even if you've been victimized. Okay. We're not trying to dismiss any abuse or anything that happened. But you're not doomed. You are not destined to remain a victim. You are not destined to fail. You are not destined to just carry that on. You are empowered. Do you hear this? Feel this? God didn't put you in that family to punish you. He didn't put you in that family to fall into these same excuses, to come into these same agreements. He put you in that family and he gave you this awareness and he gave you the courage and the strength to be the black sheep, even though it's painful. Because you are empowered by your higher power to break those chains. So we shift. So I'm not doomed, I'm empowered. I am not doomed by my circumstances. I am empowered by them. We turn them into a why. We turn them into this cycle has gone on for generations and it is really bad and it is really dark and it is really heavy and no one has been able to break it. But that just tells me that God is going to work a miracle here. That just tells me that I get to be the miracle. That this really needs to be broken, that it's time. And so we use the history of defeat, even if it's in your own life, even if you, like right now listening to this, have felt like you've been defeated by this pattern and you've just been knocked down by it and you haven't been able to kick it and you haven't been able to make a change. We look at that and we shift it into, but with God, everything is possible. So I'm not doomed because God's power is filling me up. God is driving this ship. So I'm empowered to get up and have some hope and have some faith and follow what God is calling me to do. And to know that if God assigned me this, I will break it. because God's going to break it through me, right? So you're not breaking it on your own. You have all of this divine support backing you up. So that's the first shift. You want to take it from this is, defeat, I'm doomed, destined to struggle, to I'm empowered and chosen to break this. And we do that through our higher power, through our faith, whatever that means for you. Which then gets us in a better position for this next one. So this is the one for those of you who have felt like, why is it all on me? Why couldn't somebody else figure out how to clean this up? We turn from the resentment, the bitterness of why is this all falling on me, to the gratitude, to it's an honor because God chose me. It's an honor to come into this family who has been stuck in this pain and to be able to work with God to break this. It is an honor and a privilege every single day. It is an honor and a privilege that God is making you into this spiritual warrior, is filling you up with such strength and such courage and such grit and resilience and faith, and that God chose you for this mission. That's not easy. So every time it feels so hard or it feels impossible, it's like, what an honor. Like, God, like you missed, like you're really making me strong here. Like, I definitely couldn't do this on my own. And so instead of carrying it around like a boulder, I know we have people here from all different faiths, but something that's coming up right now is I'm just seeing Jesus when he said, come to me all who are weary and heavy burdened. I will give you rest. And he says, like, my burdens are light. And yet Jesus also tells us to pick up our crosses and follow him, right? It's Matthew 16:24. Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, like ego, and take up their cross and follow me. This isn't all the time, but sometimes the generational chains are either part of your cross or are your cross, or even are your cross for a period of time. And so what does Jesus mean when he says deny yourselves? He's saying, like, I'm not going to keep trying to fix this on my own with the temporary stuff. I'm not going to keep trying to fix this with escape, with justification, it's like denying all of those kind of human impulses, like to fix and control and micromanage and figure out and or escape from, or go like, oh, this is so hard, I need to have all this pleasure over here, I need to escape into this, I need to self-medicate with XYZ. We sacrifice that part, that we hold on, I worded that wrong. We release that self-reliance, but we also pick up our cross. We take responsibility. We release the self-reliance. We take responsibility and we follow God's path for us. And sometimes that is, right, when we talk about carrying a cross, and that could be a whole different conversation, but it's a positive thing. Um, but it's also like we get to self-sacrifice, right? So there has to be a willingness. Like it's hard. It's not easy. So it might be sacrificing, that's going to be different, but it might be sacrificing some time. It might be sacrificing um, a comfortable life, but that was really empty. And so we sacrifice, we die to the self. We die to our own selfish impulses for a higher purpose. And I know so many of you personally that listen to this, and I know that some of you follow Jesus, some of you don't. And but you share this. You share this calling to of sacrifice for the higher purpose. And that says who you are in your soul. Because we know in this world, selfishness is at an all-time high. And so we forego the self-pity. And again, it's not that you dismiss how you feel. You feel how you feel. That's part of carrying it. That's part of the journey. But you don't feel sorry for yourself that you feel it. Right? It's like, this is a part of it. I was chosen for this. And I'm going to carry it. I'm going to go march forward. And I'm going to break these chains. Because ultimately, that's the path that leads to spiritual growth, to that higher purpose, to that fulfillment that is like spiritual fulfillment, soul fulfillment, God fulfillment, the kind of fulfillment that no like amount of human success could ever touch. It's the path of redemption and transformation, of emotional health and strength, right? And that's how you leave the legacy for the future generations. And so that's why in the moment, here's our third mindset shift. In the moment, when you are on this path, you're like, God chose me and anointed me and ordained me to be the chain breaker in my family lineage or in my town or in my ancestry. Some of us have bigger chains. Some of us, it's like something from our parents. Some of us, it's like, okay, it's ran through like several generations. Some of us, it's on both sides of our family line. Some it's on one. Some it's like, I had a client who came to me and she was half Native American and half Mexican. And the Mexican side, all the way, if she traced her ancestry, the Mexican side of her family, like her actual ancestors and the specific tribe were at war. So within her is this DNA of two big communities, like huge, like groups of thousands and thousands of people who are at war. The hatred, the fear, right? The violence. And she struggled with that for a long time. She said, I shouldn't be here. I like, it was like she internalized the battle until one day like God came to her, and this is what led her to do this work with me. God came to her and said, this is your destiny, not to succumb to this. You are healing this. You're transmuting this. You are breaking that chain of violence in who you are because it's within you. So when you shine your light, you heal all of it. When you're, proud and grateful for both sides, both parts of you, when you integrate it into the light, It's like, that's the healing. I've had several clients coming to me recently, and it's been absolutely just mind-blowing, the messages that God sends through for this, but of people coming to me are um, who have family lines who are either Christian and Muslim or Jewish and Muslim. Because obviously we know, the Israel Gaza thing is happening right now, and conflict. Sorry, don't mean to call it a thing. Or minimize it, obviously, in any way. And Christians are being persecuted in Africa. I mean, it's terrifying right now. And so we have these conflicts, like huge conflicts where people are dying and horrific things are being done, and people are coming and they're healing both of those lineages that exist within them. And it's been amazing. That's part of what inspired me to create this course, and what got me like just totally immersed in this topic, and then seeing how it was coming in for other clients. Yeah, so that's it, all kind of has fed to this. But think about that. Like, it's an honor to get to heal on any, like, your lineage on any level, whether it's just from one person or from thousands. Whether it's your mother's line or your father's line or your entire tribe, your entire country of origin, your nation of people. And so that shows up in the day to day. When we're called to be a chain breaker, it's going to show up in your day to day as triggers. As triggers of that internal battle, triggers that bring up any kind of like incongruence, any kind of misalignment in yourself. Triggers that are just normal basic triggers where somebody says something and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have to not scream or I have to not cry. Like, where it triggers some reaction that is like not, like, it doesn't match what was said. Like, where it's triggering something that's within you. It's not even about what your husband said or what so and so did, or a conversation between two people at the grocery store. It's like, or the road rage guy that flipped you off. It's like, that's compounding on these chains or on these old wounds. But your triggers, so the mindset shift is for you to see that your triggers are how you break the chains, right? We talked about this. We talked about how to break these chains, we got to go to the spiritual root, but then we got to bring it into the day-to-day. The triggers is the day-to-day piece. It would be great if we could all just, I would love to tell you that we could do one session and we could break that spiritual contract and you would never have it come up again. What we do is we break the spiritual contract. We address the core origin of that, but then, right, Holy Spirit sends through like, okay, now you got to do this, because now you've got to rewire, right? It's either rewiring your brain, it's reprogramming yourself. You got to renew. So we got to we do both in my sessions. We look at the origin, but then we come back and we look at, okay, so, and one of the things that I always ask or that God will always show me is like, okay, let's look at the trigger that you have, like the biggest one to the smallest one. How are we going to break that? Let's go in and break that. And that's what, God always has the most brilliant ideas. Like half the time I'm like writing notes down after client sessions because I'm like, I need to remember that. Like, you're so amazing. Like, with what you know, like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. But it's like the biggest thing is pausing, right? Like we want to, when you feel triggered, you want to pause because you want to pause is breaking the cycle because you're pausing to prevent the automatic reaction that has been the pattern or the habit. So you start with a pause. Then you come in, and this is where obviously when we're working together, we get way more specific about it, where you have like actual, like true, like actual things to say, to respond, to do, all of that to help you. But to give you an idea, like you can just pray on like, how would God, like the person who God made me to be, the chain breaker, the one who's breaking the cycle, who I truly am in my true identity as a child of God, how would that version of me respond here? Sometimes it's holding a boundary. Sometimes it's saying no. Sometimes it's softening and listening. Sometimes it's I've worked with couples where God's like they need like a code word like hamburger, like something that's completely unemotional and kind of silly, where somebody says pauses and is like, I'm going to respond in a way that's going to keep this pattern going. So hamburger, and hamburger means you walk away. You take a break for like a half an hour or an hour, then you come back and talk about it. And sometimes that's the biggest thing to break a cycle. So the triggers, because the triggers are the symptoms of the chains. So that is where you break each link, right? They're the symptoms, they're the little links of these chains. So we go in, we break each link. And so guess what? You get to the point where you have this mindset and it's like true, right? Like it's not like you trying to be positive. It's like you actually start to get this mindset of, oh my gosh, I'm really triggered. This is big opportunity. This is like a big link for me. And this is a big opportunity for me to use these tools and break this. And so the mindset shift is triggers are opportunities. To not fear triggers, but to like be grateful when they're coming up. This is how I'm breaking this. God, help guide me in this, right? Like leaning on God to help you show up in a different way. Really powerful practice. So just to cover that, right? Like it's, so these 3 mindset shifts. 4 generational chain breakers. 1, you're not doomed, you are empowered. You were chosen to break these chains. But that power comes from God. When we're trying to do it all ourselves, we're gonna feel doomed. And we might be a little doomed. So that's self-reliance, God reliance, right? Like that, and your higher power. You are empowered by that higher power, by God, by the Holy Spirit, by Christ, by, whatever it is that you believe, like to succeed. And with God, you won't fail. And then number 2, it is an honor that God chose you, that God made you, that God sent you to break this chain. It is an honor, it is a privilege, and we give thanks. We give thanks that God is using us to break this chain. It is a sacred journey, and you're going to get the benefit out of it. You're going to get all the spiritual growth. You're going to get the fulfillment. Like it might be really devastating in the moment, but like you're going to get, like, it's not really martyrdom because like you're going to get so many benefits from it in the long run. And then number 3, triggers are the opportunities. Triggers are the ways that we break the chains. When you start to bring that mindset into your life, into those conversations where you know those chains have been there, it totally shifts your perspective, and that gives you that space to start showing up differently, to start breaking those links one link at a time, and then building new connections, new habits, right? Turning the triggers into glimmers, glimmers of hope, glimmers of possibility. Look at that, like where we used to argue about this all the time. Now we're so good, we laugh and it's a joke and it's really light and we like bond over it. That's turning a trigger into a glimmer. Okay? And it is possible. I see it every day in my clients. And like I said, I see things from I mean severe like trauma cycles that I can't even fathom happen to people. Like harm caused by parents and grandparents that is truly, I mean, horrifying on every level. And I see them break it. To the chains, and you guys, I never want to label anything as better or worse, but what I do, because I know sometimes women can do this, we can be like, okay, well, the chains in my family aren't that bad. Like it wasn't really anything horrifying. Those are sometimes the hardest to break because it's like there's a permission there, there's a normalcy, right? So you got to watch that. So again, nothing is really, we're not labeling it easy to hard. I more look at it like big to small, but small doesn't always mean easy because again, small is like, okay, I can carry that. Doesn't maybe hold me back as much as I think. So you want to look at it and not underestimate those smaller ones, those chains that are maybe longer in length, where you have a little more freedom, but you're still chained. They're still the chain, influencing behavior, influencing your thinking, influencing your relationships. So we got to break that. And then we can create these new strings of light in our lineages and release that light to the future generations and leave that legacy behind. And maybe one day, who knows, maybe one day your family will look at you as the chain breaker saint of your family because of what God did through you. So it really is, it's an honor and a privilege to get to walk this path. And please just know that you can do it. Like I said, like I see it every day. I'm so honored because seeing it in my clients, like I don't have any room for self-doubt, right? Because I'm human like everybody else. I can get those stories of like, oh, why is this coming up again? Blah, I don't want to do it. Why is this hard? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, Sarah, you just saw 5 people this week break something similar, or whatnot. Like, you can do it. Like, buck up, buttercup. Like, you've got this. And so that's where like the mindset shifts, like they really come into like real time of like, no, I'm not doomed. Like, wait, stop, mind, stop that thought, right? Feeling sorry for myself? No, God chose me for this. I've seen other people do it. I've broken other chains. I'm empowered. Not only am I empowered, I'm grateful. It's an honor to be a chain breaker. I'm a spiritual warrior, right? You got to amp yourself up. And then it's like, oh, look at that trigger. I'm going to break it. I'm not going to react. It gets like fun. And, life is supposed to be fun. I think we all can make it a little too serious sometimes. So, yeah, remember to like also lighten some things up for yourself from time to time, because it does make it easier. Okay. Amazing stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I would love to hear from you if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a comment. Let me know. Let me know what stuck out for you. If these mindset shifts were, super helpful for you, or how you're going to practice them. If you identify as a chain breaker, and even just throw like broken chain emoji or a heart emoji down in the comments. I'd love to just see all of you who are here. Um, and if you are not subscribed or following yet, wherever you listen to the Sarah Renee Show, make sure you hit subscribe or you hit follow so that you get the alerts of the new episodes every single week. Stay tuned for the Anointed Chain Breakers Generational Healing Journey. There's going to be a really awesome early bird discount. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you don't follow me on social media, you can find me, Sarah Renee, on Facebook. Find my personal account. I never post on the business one. And I'm not on Facebook as much anymore, but Instagram is probably the best place at the Sarah Renee Show. Over there, you can also email me, sarahrenee444@gmail.com. We're moving over the website this week. So excited. So that's going to be sarahrenee.com as soon as it's ready. Hopefully later today as this is out, but we'll see. Okay, so yeah, stay in touch with me there. I will also put the calendar link. My holiday availability is currently up and sessions are filling up. So if you know you want to get a one-on-one in before the end of the year, you can book there. And then there's some really amazing Black Friday deals coming soon. So stay connected for all of that. And thank you so much for being here. And then last but not least, share this episode or, tag me if you share it on social media, but share this episode with, somebody on social media or somebody that you love, somebody that could use this insight on healing their generational trauma, breaking chains in their life, let you know that you believe in them, that you know that they are a powerful chain breaker and God chose them specifically for this mission because they are meant to succeed. They are meant to heal. They're meant to thrive. All right. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Okay. Bye.